Happy that she chose me because I want to get in that ring against Moolah. It'll be the thing I have worked for 4.5 years.
The story of how the Fabulous Moolah ruined Wendi Richter has to be one of the wildest scandals in wrestling history. Not only did Wendi have some serious issues with Moolah, but the things she later revealed about her, absolutely shocking. Fans were left speechless. So what really happened? And what did Wendi say that had everyone so disturbed? Let's break it all down. The infamous screw job that ended Richter's title reign didn't just cost her the championship, it completely shattered what little relationship she had left with the Fabulous Moolah. To be honest, their bond had already been rocky for a long time. Wendi never held back her feelings about Moolah. She openly admitted she didn't like her and believed Moolah went out of her way to hurt her during matches. But it didn't stop there. According to Wendi, Moolah wasn't just a problem inside the ring. She claimed Moolah ran a training school where students weren't properly taught and were often taken advantage of, especially when it came to money. In Wendi's eyes, Moolah didn't just hurt individual careers, she made the entire business look bad, especially for women trying to break through in a male-dominated industry. The way Wendi lost her title in that screw job wasn't just personal, it revealed something much bigger. It exposed just how shaky things were for women's wrestling in the WWF back then. One moment, Wendi was a top star leading a wrestling revolution alongside Cyndi Lauper and riding the rock and wrestling wave. The next, she was out. No explanation, no warning, no respect. That kind of behind-the-scenes power play showed how easily personal grudges and business decisions could completely derail a wrestler's career, especially if you were a woman. Some fans and wrestling historians believe that this moment didn't just hurt Wendi, it set women's wrestling back in the WWF. After her exit, the spotlight on the women's division faded, and it would take years before it bounced back again. The energy and momentum Wendi helped create were suddenly gone. But despite everything, Wendi didn't let it define her. She moved on from the WWF and kept wrestling in other promotions, including the AWA, as well as in Puerto Rico and Japan. She continued doing what she loved, even though the WWF door had been slammed shut. Eventually, Wendi stepped away from the ring entirely and took her life in a whole new direction. She went back to school, earned a master's degree in occupational therapy, and even got into breeding and showing dogs, a far cry from the wild world of professional wrestling. It was clear she had found peace in her life, even if that peace didn't come from the wrestling world. In 2010, something surprising happened. Wendi Richter was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. It was a big moment, one that many saw as the company extending an olive branch. And while Wendi accepted the honor, it didn't mean she had forgotten the past. She made it clear that she still held strong feelings about how she was treated, especially about the screw job and everything tied to the Fabulous Moolah. But hey, there's so much more to Wendi Richter than just all the drama. So let's put the controversy aside for a moment and shine a light on the good times and the great moments that truly defined her career. She wasn't just a strong in-ring performer, she was a symbol of change at a time when women were fighting for respect and visibility in professional wrestling. Her journey, filled with big matches, powerful rivalries, and a mix of backstage battles, helped shape the course of women's wrestling forever. Wendi Richter's wrestling story began back in the late 1970s when she trained at the Fabulous Moolah's Wrestling School, officially known as the Lillian Ellison School of Professional Wrestling. But while the school bore Moolah's name, it was actually other well-known wrestlers like Leilani Kai, Judy Martin, and Joyce Grable who helped train her. These early lessons shaped Wendi's style, and it wasn't long before she stepped into the ring for her professional debut in 1979. By the early 1980s, Wendi was already showing promise. In 1982, she was featured in the tag team matches alongside none other than Moolah herself, facing off against Velvet McIntyre and Princess Victoria in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. But it was her partnership with Joyce Grable that really kicked things into high gear. Together, they formed a tough and energetic duo called the Texas Cowgirls. The name fit perfectly. They were strong, fearless, and brought a Southern attitude to every match. The Texas Cowgirls quickly became a serious team to watch. In late 1982, they wrestled across Canada in Stampede Wrestling, continuing their rivalry with Velvet McIntyre and Judy Martin. The back-and-forth battles between those four women would carry on through multiple promotions, including Bill Watts' Mid-South Wrestling Association, where Wendi also had solo matches and even became close with future wrestling manager Jim Cornette. Cornette liked Wendi so much he made her an honorary member of the Midnight Express. By 1983, Wendi and Joyce Grable were still going strong, now facing off against familiar foes like McIntyre and Penny Mitchell in Vern Gagne's American Wrestling Association. The matches were physical, competitive, and full of storytelling. During this time, Wendi and Joyce also became two-time NWA Women's World Tag Team Champions, adding real credibility to their run. Then came a big turning point. In late 1983, Wendi signed with Vince McMahon's World Wrestling Federation, just as the company was preparing for a national explosion. She was brought in to work matches alongside Peggy Lee, continuing her battles with Velvet McIntyre and Princess Victoria. But little did she know, something huge was about to happen that would change her life and the industry forever. In 1984, Vince McMahon had a bold idea: combine the worlds of pop music and professional wrestling. He called it the Rock and Wrestling Connection. To make it work, he brought in pop superstar Cyndi Lauper, whose music video for Girls Just Want to Have Fun had already featured wrestling manager Lou Albano. In this new storyline, Albano would side with WWF Women's Champion, the Fabulous Moolah, while Lauper would support Wendi Richter, the rising star set to challenge Moolah for the title. The stage was set for a massive showdown, and it all went down on MTV in a special event called The Brawl to End It All. On July 23, 1984, in front of a national TV audience, Wendi Richter faced the Fabulous Moolah in a match that had all the drama and energy of a true main event. In a dramatic finish, Richter managed to lift her shoulder during a double pinfall situation, while Moolah's shoulder stayed down. Just like that, Wendi became the new WWF Women's Champion. This wasn't just any title win. In storyline terms, she ended what was promoted as Moolah's 28-year championship reign, the longest in wrestling history. While that reign was a bit of a stretch, it didn't change the fact that Wendi's victory was massive. It gave women's wrestling a huge moment in the spotlight, and the MTV broadcast pulled in record ratings. This match officially kicked off the rock and wrestling era, a wild, colorful time when wrestling became part of pop culture, thanks in large part to Wendi Richter and Cyndi Lauper. Wendi quickly became a household name. She had star power, talent, and a catchphrase to match, calling herself 150 pounds of twisted steel and sex appeal. She appeared in Lauper's music video for She Bop and was even featured as a cartoon character on the CBS Saturday morning show Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling. For a moment, it felt like the sky was the limit. But success in wrestling doesn't always come without tension. Wendi's next big feud was with Leilani Kai, a former ally turned rival who was also trained by Moolah. In early 1985, Kai shocked fans by defeating Richter for the women's title during the war to settle the score. But just 1 month later, Wendi got her revenge, regaining the championship at the very first WrestleMania in front of a packed Madison Square Garden crowd. That win helped cement her place in history. Despite her rising star, things behind the scenes weren't going so smoothly. Wendi started having serious disagreements with Vince McMahon, especially over her pay. She believed she wasn't getting what she deserved and often refused to sign the new contracts the WWF was offering. She thought she was still under her original 5-year agreement and didn't see why she needed to sign anything else. That conflict led to one of the most shocking betrayals in wrestling history. On November 25, 1985, Wendi was scheduled to defend her title at Madison Square Garden against a mysterious masked opponent known only as the Spider. But something was off from the start. Wendi was surprised to see Moolah backstage, especially since Moolah usually never showed up to shows she wasn't working. That night during the match, the Spider suddenly broke from the planned routine. In a rushed and awkward finish, Wendi was pinned after just a 1 count. The referee, who was clearly in on the plan, called for the bell anyway. The crowd was confused, so was Wendi. Furious, she kept fighting after the bell and eventually pulled off the Spider's mask, revealing none other than the Fabulous Moolah. It was a setup. This moment became known as the original screwjob, years before the more famous one involving Bret Hart in 1997. It was widely reported that Vince McMahon orchestrated the whole thing to take the title off Richter, punishing her for refusing to sign a new deal. Wendi was livid. She stormed out of the building, still in her gear, hopped into a cab, and flew out of New York that same night. She never spoke to Moolah again. Even after that betrayal, Wendi didn't stop wrestling. She traveled across the US, Puerto Rico, and Japan, continuing to compete in various promotions. In Puerto Rico's World Wrestling Council, she feuded with Monster Ripper and captured the WWC Women's Championship twice in 1987. Later that year, she showed up in the American Wrestling Association and immediately went after AWA Women's Champion Medusa Miceli. Wendi eventually won that title in December 1988. At Super Clash 3, she teamed with the Top Guns to take on Medusa and Bad Company in a mixed tag match, getting the win by pinning her old rival once again. By the 1990s, Wendi started stepping away from wrestling, only making occasional appearances. In 2005, she took part in the Wrestle Reunion events, teaming up with other female legends for multi-woman matches. Though she wasn't wrestling full-time, fans still remembered her impact. Life after wrestling took Wendi in a totally different direction. She earned a master's degree in occupational therapy and began working in the healthcare field. She also found joy in raising and showing dogs, stepping far away from the spotlight of the wrestling world. But even with her new path, the past never fully faded. On June 16, 2012, she returned to WWE television for a segment with Cyndi Lauper and Layla, celebrating the legacy of rock and wrestling. And most recently, during a 2023 AEW press conference, women's champion Timeless Toni Storm jokingly challenged Wendi Richter by name, shouting, "Wendi Richter, I'm going to fuck you up." It was a playful moment, but also a reminder that Wendi's name still carries weight in the wrestling world. Richter's journey wasn't easy, and yes, it was full of ups and downs. But her courage, her talent, and her refusal to back down helped change the game for women in wrestling. She stood up for herself when it mattered most. And even though it cost her a spot on the main stage for a while, it earned her something even more powerful: respect. And that brings us to the end of today's video. But don't worry, there's plenty more on the way. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our upcoming stories. If you enjoyed this one, give it a like and let us know in the comments what you'd love to see next.